The biggest story of the week is a potentially seismic shift in the entertainment world, one that will have far-reaching consequences, including for the pro wrestling landscape. Although what those consequences are is something that we don't really yet fully understand, and we're not going to for a while. The news was broken by TheWrap.com late Thursday, but has since been made official. I'll just read you from this email I got directly from Netflix on Saturday morning, which I'm sure many of you got as well if you're a subscriber. We recently announced that Netflix will acquire Warner Brothers, including its film and television studios, HBO Max, and HBO. This unites our leading entertainment service with Warner Brothers' iconic stories, bringing some of the world's most beloved franchises like Harry Potter, Friends, The Big Bang Theory, Casablanca, Game of Thrones, and the DC Universe, together with Stranger Things, Wednesday, Squid Game, Bridgerton, and K-pop Demon Hunters. That's one that I missed. Should I begin watching K-pop Demon Hunters? That sounds kind of interesting, I'm not going to lie. So they say, what's changing? Nothing is changing today. Both streaming services will continue to operate separately. We have more steps to complete before the deal is closed, including regulatory and shareholder approvals. You'll hear from us when we have more to share. So yes, Netflix has, for now, won the bidding war for Warner Brothers Discovery, who is, of course, AEW's media rights partner. This was something of a shock, as most of the chatter and the news stories had Paramount Skydance and the Ellison family getting it, which would have been bad enough. This is also pretty bad. I don't see any of these potential names getting it being a good thing. And Paramount may still yet end up getting it. There's still a long way to go before this becomes official. But The Wrap was first to report that Netflix had hit the magic $30 a share target that David Zaslav was looking for. Deadline.com says they offer $28 a share. The deal is said to be valued at $82.7 billion. And under an effort nicknamed Project Noble, Netflix leadership secured $59 billion in financing from a consortium of banks to assemble the deal. Netflix says the buy would give users more choice and let it, quote, optimize its plans. Oh boy. You know what that means. It will also expand its studio operations while creating better value for talent and shareholders with $2 billion to $3 billion in annual cost savings. The deal proposal has a breakup fee of $5.8 billion, meaning that if the acquisition is scuttled in any way, so basically if this thing falls apart, Netflix is on the hook to pay Warner Brothers Discovery $5.8 billion. The companies revealed the acquisition early Friday, altering the course of the entertainment business. Netflix said that it expects to maintain the current operations of Warner Brothers, including theatrical releases for films, though specifics aside from top-line deal numbers remain scarce. Paramount had already made 3 bids for Warner Brothers Discovery previously, all of which were rejected by Zaslav. But it still seemed like they were the frontrunner to buy the entire thing. And that was their plan. They wanted to buy the whole kit and caboodle. They weren't going to just, buy it for certain parts. We only want this. We don't want that. So it would have included the movie studios, the intellectual property, the television networks, the streaming service, all of it. Paramount has also been pushing that because they're friendly with the Trump administration, a deal with Paramount would just sail through regulatory approval a hell of a lot quicker than it would with Netflix or somebody else. So this was quite the turn of events this week. And it became very clear earlier in the week that things were not going well for Paramount when they issued a letter to Warner Brothers Discovery CEO David Zaslav, claiming that the bid process had been tainted by management conflict. So they knew that things were starting to look bleak. They were starting to panic. Now, if they wanted to make trouble for Netflix, they could take their own offer directly to the Warner Brothers Discovery shareholders. I don't know what their last bid offer was for. I doubt the shareholders would go for it if it's not as high as what Netflix offered, but they could stress, how much faster they would be able to close a deal than Netflix could, even though Netflix is saying they expect the deal to close in the third quarter of next year. Maybe that's being optimistic. That's also when Warner Brothers is expected to split off its television networks into a separate company called Discovery Global. That was already in the works for a while. Paramount could try to get the shareholders to revolt. Whether they go that route remains to be seen. This is all still developing. Okay, Netflix has not acquired anything yet. They could send out all the emails to its users that they want. They have not yet acquired anything. One business reporter for Fox Business reported that a Trump administration regulator, speaking on the condition of anonymity, said that Warner Brothers Discovery is far more likely to collect that $5.8 billion breakup fee than it is to get this Netflix deal through the regulatory process. That's okay. Just promise to give him a peace prize, and I'm sure it'll sail right through. You know, a lot of people are very much against this move, mainly people in the entertainment world who would be directly impacted by such a move. The Hollywood Reporter says people inside the studio, inside Warner Brothers, are said to be shook, and that no one even knows what any of this means. And those are people that are in the industry. Even they don't know, like in the long term, how this is all going to shake out and what this really means. You know, with any merger or any acquisition, you can expect job losses. I mean, that's a given. But Variety is reporting that many prominent filmmakers have sent an open letter to Congress describing a potential economic and institutional meltdown in Hollywood if the Netflix deal goes through. And the letter was unsigned due to fear of retribution. The main area of concern is that Netflix is going to destroy the theater business. This is the narrative, this is the fear, this is the belief on the part of many people. And rightfully so. You know, Ted Sarandos, the head of Netflix, has openly said before, even as recently as this year, that he feels the movie theater model is outdated because people can't just walk to their local theater. He says, yeah, if you live in Manhattan, sure, you can go out, you can walk to your local movie theater, but in most places across the country, you can't do that. And he's also said that the 45-day release window for movies doesn't work anymore, and that people want faster and more convenient access to movies from home. And there's talk that what Netflix is proposing, and this is not confirmed, but what they are proposing is an exclusive theater window for movie releases as little as 2 weeks before those movies would then move to streaming. Now, they may deny that. I fully believe, I mean, just based on their own comments over the years, that their long-term goal is not focused on movie theaters. It's not what they do. They've said this before. That's not our business. That's not what we do. What it's focused on is the home viewing experience. And yes, I do think that if this deal ultimately goes through, it's going to be a slow death for movie theaters. But I mean, let's be honest, okay? Movie theaters have been dying a slow death for a while now. And they can't just blame streaming for that. There is much to blame as anyone. Like me, I don't go to the movies as much as I used to. I think the prices they charge for tickets and refreshments, I mean, it's as ridiculous as the prices that WWE charges for tickets to their events, right? But people still pay and they still go. So that's why they charge those exorbitant prices. Greed is the number one reason that movie theaters are dying. And it doesn't help that you go to a movie these days and you spend 35 minutes watching commercials and previews before the actual movie starts. Although some of them now, they at least put the time on your ticket that the actual film starts. Like, I know some of them do that, maybe not all of them. I know some of them do that. But it's ridiculous that it takes almost 3 hours to watch a 2-hour movie. You know, some of these movie theaters are also understaffed. They're fucking dirty. I'm looking at you, AMC. I mean, there have been multiple bedbug outbreaks at some of the AMC theaters in New York over the past few years. I mean, I can't speak to how it is elsewhere, but that was one of the reasons I stopped going. Right? And then you have to deal with the assholes who talk over the movie or they won't put their fucking phones away. And of course, they have to be on maximum brightness. And nobody does anything about it. And it sucks because there are some movies that are so much more fun to watch, you know, in a packed theater than they would be at home by yourself. I remember Jason versus Freddy all those years ago. God, when did that movie come out? 2000, I don't know, maybe 03. Whatever it was, that was one of the most fun experiences I've ever had in a theater. Like, people were openly applauding parts of the movie. I saw the movie Megan. It's a more recent movie. I saw that one. It was about the killer doll, which was a hell of a lot more fun than I thought it was going to be. I had so much fun with that one. And I was kicking myself for not seeing it in a theater when it first came out. That would have made it even better. You just can't replicate that same experience at home, right? Or watching a movie in IMAX. That's how I saw The Dark Knight when it came out, right? It would not have been the same at home on whatever I had back then. I definitely didn't have a flat screen. I know that. And then COVID also killed the theater business for a while. I'm still not sure they've totally recovered from that. Today, it's a lot cheaper and it's a lot more convenient to just wait for the movie to hit streaming, especially if you only have to wait a few weeks for it to come out. Shortening those movie release windows is only going to hasten the collapse of these cinemas, and maybe they deserve it because they've been gouging people for years and they refuse to change. But that doesn't mean it isn't sad. It is. It's very sad. So I don't think in the short term they're going to kill off the theatrical model. I think it'll be a slow and steady thing just because they have to make their money back, and they'll make money on the theatrical end, especially with those big budget blockbusters. I mean, they're paying a lot of money here, but they're borrowing a lot of money too. They've got to make that money back somehow. So it's not going to go away overnight. What this means, though, are the price hikes are going to be insane. And I'm telling you, we're going to be looking back soon and reminiscing about today being the good old days when a standard Netflix subscription only set you back $17.99 a month. We're going to be looking back on these days fondly in the not too distant future. Soon this shit's going to cost as much as cable does. I blame Blockbuster Video for all this. They could have had Netflix 25 years ago for $50 billion. Instead, they laughed them out of the room. But then again, if it wasn't Netflix, it would have been someone else, disrupting the space. But there are a lot of questions that we do not have answers to. If they get it, will they keep HBO Max as its own standalone service, or are they going to merge it with Netflix, right? I don't know that they would merge it with Netflix when they can just charge people for two separate streaming services and milk them for all they're worth. For now, they're separate anyway, because the deal's not going through for at least a year. But after that, we don't know what they're going to do. And whatever they say now, you can't even take it at face value. I mean, it almost doesn't even matter publicly what they say now. The fact this would even be allowed to go through is ridiculous enough because you have the largest streamer in the entire world potentially absorbing the third largest, one of their biggest competitors. Like, how does that not violate antitrust laws? I mean, this would seem to be the very thing they were intended to prevent. This would give them a huge market share, over 30%. And that was the benchmark that the Justice Department set a few years ago in its guidelines to decide whether or not to block a merger. So what's the justification for approving this? That's what I'd like to know. Warner Brothers is much bigger than just movies. I mean, they own DC, which has its own arm that releases DC Comics. Like, those comics are still being printed right now, but who knows, the way everything is going digital these days, maybe we get to a point soon where they're not physically published anymore. I mean, there's so many layers to this. But then there's AEW. A lot of people predicting the demise of AEW because of this. A lot of people have been predicting the demise of AEW for a long time. And they have been made to look foolish, especially after they signed that new media rights deal with Warner Brothers Discovery. They've got a lot of guaranteed money coming in for at least the next couple of years. I don't see any of that changing. I think people predicting their impending doom are really one of two things. They're either being hysterical or they're being intentionally deceitful. The key here is that Netflix is not acquiring the linear channels, right? Which is where AEW Dynamite airs. Dynamite, Collision, although they do simulcast their shows on HBO Max, and they offer their pay-per-views now through Max, and their library of events are also hosted on HBO Max. HBO Max gets a cut of all the pay-per-views that are bought through the service, right? It's one of many services that offer the pay-per-views. It's not the exclusive home for AEW pay-per-views, but they get a cut of every sale. And Full Gear is reported to have done around 140,000 buys, which is considered a big success. I would consider that a good number because I didn't think Full Gear had a whole lot of excitement around it going into the show. That may be their highest buy rate since they started offering the show through Max. Dynamite and Collision are not going anywhere anytime soon. It'll take a year to get the deal done if it gets done. Then it gets interesting because they would have about a year left on their existing deal. Warner may have an option year that they could execute for 2028. I think I remember reading that somewhere. But if not, they're going to have to begin negotiating in probably about a year for a potential renewal. And at that point, you have a lot of instability potentially. Instability is not a good thing, right? It's anyone's guess what's going to happen. There may be new management in charge of things. It may not be the same executives that Tony Khan has dealt with before. He claims he has all these great relationships with them. They may not be around anymore, or they may not be in the same positions that they're in right now. They may no longer want wrestling on their networks. It's possible Tony has to find another home. And WWE has not made it easy with how many different partners that they have deals with. But anyone telling you that they know for sure what all of this means for AEW beyond the next year or two is lying to you. They don't know. Nobody knows. Tony Khan doesn't even know. He can put on a brave face when he gets asked about it publicly, but even he deep down does not know how all of this in the end is going to shake out. He was asked about this after the Ring of Honor pay-per-view on Friday and said there's still a lot of time on their deals with TBS, TNT, and HBO Max. He also said he's had a great relationship with all the publicly known bidders for the company, including Netflix and Paramount, through his NFL dealings. But he said there's over 2 years to go on their deals with Warner. Netflix obviously has the relationship with WWE. This is what a lot of people are focusing in on. Oh, they have Raw. They have the relationship with them, so they're not going to work with AEW. The only potential negative in this for AEW right now, as I see it, really has to do with HBO Max. Because Tony was waiting a long time to get that Max deal to kick in and offer the pay-per-views on there. It took a long time. Tony says he's got a deal for their content to be on Max. But if Netflix controls it or eventually merges it into its own service, I don't know what kind of deal WWE has with them in terms of exclusivity, right? If they do have some sort of exclusivity, that could be a whole antitrust case unto itself if Tony wanted to go that route. WWE already lost $20 million, which, is nothing to them. But they lost $20 million to settle with MLW in their antitrust lawsuit. At worst, it means AEW would have to find a new streaming home, and that would hurt them. I watch Dynamite through the HBO Max app. I just find it to be a better viewing experience for me over watching it directly on TBS. I would be disappointed if I couldn't watch it there anymore, but for me, it wouldn't be the end of the world. For AEW, it would be a blow, but hardly a death blow. I think talk of their demise is greatly exaggerated. When it comes to AEW, the bigger issue is what happens when their existing deals are up. Can they remain, or do they have to go find a new home? And then at that point, what's available, for them that WWE and TKO haven't already boxed them out of? If they find another home, then the TNT and TBS titles would cease to exist, and he would just make 2 new ones to replace them. Because if there's one thing that we've learned that Tony Khan really likes doing, it's creating new belts. So that wouldn't be very difficult for him to do.